The smell of simmering tomato sauce filled my kitchen, mixing with the faint scent of garlic bread warming in the oven. The old clock above the sink ticked steadily, the only sound besides the bubbling pot on the stove. I'd been looking forward to this quiet evening, even though I hadn't expected company. My daughter-in-law Claire had called only hours before, her voice brisk and clipped, the way it usually was when she spoke to me. "Margaret," she had said, "I need to drop Elijah off with you tonight. I'm going to visit my parents for the weekend. I'll pick him up on Monday." She hadn't asked. She told me, like I was a babysitter she could summon at will. But I didn't argue. My grandson was 5 years old, sweet as spring sunshine, and I would never pass up a chance to spend time with him. So here we were, sitting across from each other at my worn oak dining table, the one that had seen decades of family dinners, birthday cakes, and even tearful arguments. The steam from the pasta curled upward, the garlic bread sat sliced on a plate, and a small glass of milk waited beside his plate. I had made everything with love. But Elijah didn't move. His small hands rested stiffly in his lap, his big hazel eyes, so much like his father's when he was little, stared at the food as if it were something dangerous. My heart squeezed. He looked so small sitting there, feet dangling above the floor, his hair falling into his face. "Elijah, sweetheart," I said softly, "go on. Eat before it gets cold." He didn't answer. He just kept staring at the spaghetti. I tried again, this time picking up my fork and taking a bite, showing him how good it was. "See? Just the way your daddy liked it when he was your age. I even made it with the little meatballs. Your favorite." Still nothing. Finally, I leaned forward, my voice a whisper. "Why aren't you eating, honey?" That was when he looked up at me, his lower lip trembling, his voice barely audible. "Am I allowed to eat today?" For a moment, I thought I hadn't heard him right. But then his tiny shoulders began to shake, and tears spilled down his cheeks. He covered his face with his hands, muffling a sob that tore through the quiet kitchen. The fork slipped from my fingers, clattering against my plate. My heart stopped. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer. He just cried harder, as though he'd broken some secret rule by speaking at all. I moved to his side of the table, kneeling beside him, my old knees protesting against the hard tile floor. Gently, I pulled his hands away from his face, brushing his hair back so I could see him. His eyes darted away from mine, filled with shame no child should ever know. "Elijah," I whispered, trying to keep my own fear from spilling out. "Of course you're allowed to eat. Why would you think you're not?" His lips pressed tightly together. He shook his head, refusing to say more. But the damage was done. The words hung in the air like smoke, filling the room with a suffocating dread. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. I slid the plate closer to him and gently guided the fork into his hand. "Eat, darling. You're safe here. No one will stop you." He sniffled, hesitating, then twirled a small bite of spaghetti. He lifted it to his mouth with trembling hands, chewing slowly, cautiously, like each bite might be his last. I sat back, trying to keep my hands from shaking as I watched him. My mind was already racing. Why had he asked that? Who had told him otherwise? I thought back to the few times I'd been around Claire when Elijah was eating. She always seemed strict about his food. Too strict. Counting bites, snatching snacks away, telling him he'd had enough even when his plate was barely touched. At the time, I'd brushed it off as her being health-conscious. But now, I wasn't so sure. I reached for his milk, setting it in front of him. "Drink, sweetheart." He looked at the glass warily before taking a sip. The sight nearly broke me in two. My grandson, drinking milk like a child starved of comfort. As he ate, slowly, silently, I sat in my chair with 1,000 thoughts screaming in my head. I am Margaret Holloway, 56 years old, retired nurse. I spent 30 years caring for patients at Riverside Hospital here in Columbus, Ohio. I've held the hands of dying strangers, comforted families at their lowest moments, and sacrificed my own dreams so my children could chase theirs. My husband, Richard, passed away 5 years ago after a heart attack. Since then, this house has been too quiet, too empty. I thought I had done my part as a mother. I raised my son, Samuel, with everything I had to give. I worked double shifts so he could play baseball, stayed up nights sewing costumes for his school plays, sacrificed vacations to pay for his college tuition. And now, here he was, married to a woman who barely looked me in the eye and raising a child who whispered *, "Am I allowed to eat today?" *. Had I really been so blind? "Elijah," I said gently as he finished a meatball, "can you tell Grandma what you meant earlier?" He froze, his fork hovering in midair. His wide eyes flicked toward the front door, as though expecting his mother to walk in at any moment. "It's okay," I reassured him quickly. "It's just us here. You can tell me." But instead of answering, he whispered something else. Something so soft I had to lean close, straining to hear. His little voice cracked as he said, "Mommy says food is for good boys. Sometimes I'm not good." The words sliced through me like a blade. My chest tightened, my hands gripping the edge of the table to steady myself. What kind of mother makes a child believe he doesn't deserve to eat? I forced myself to keep calm, not wanting to frighten him further. I stroked his hair, my voice firm but kind. "Sweetheart, you are always good. You deserve food every single day. Do you hear me? Every day." He nodded, but the haunted look in his eyes told me he didn't quite believe me. I wanted to press him, to demand answers, but I knew better. As a nurse, I'd learned that sometimes children needed time. Pushing too hard could make them retreat. Still, my stomach churned with unease. I couldn't shake the image of him sitting in silence, staring at the food like it was forbidden. I couldn't ignore the words he had whispered. When Claire dropped him off, she hadn't even kissed him goodbye. She had barely spoken to him, tossing his backpack into my hallway before rushing out the door with a quick, "Thanks, Margaret." And Samuel, my son, hadn't called in weeks. He was always too busy with work. Always too distracted. Always too distant. Something was wrong in that household. Something I should have seen sooner. "Elijah," I said finally, lifting his chin so he would look at me. "You never have to be afraid here. Do you understand? In this house, you will always have food. You will always be safe." His lips quivered, and then, for the first time, a tiny smile flickered. He nodded slowly, clutching the fork like it was an anchor keeping him from drifting away. But as I watched him eat, another thought took root, colder and darker. If my grandson was being mistreated, if he was being starved in his own home, then I couldn't just sit back. I had devoted my entire life to caring for others. And I would not stand by while my grandson suffered. But before I could plan my next move, Elijah leaned close, his little hand tugging at my sleeve. His voice trembled as he whispered words that made the blood drain from my face. "Grandma, please don't tell Mommy I told you. She'll get mad. She'll hurt me." The room spun. The fork slipped from my hand, clattering against the table. I stared at him, my heart pounding, a sickening realization crashing down on me. This wasn't just neglect. It was something far worse. And I was the only one who could save him. I didn't sleep that night. Elijah had finally drifted off in the guest room, his tiny body curled into a ball, clutching the stuffed bear I'd found in a box of Samuel's old toys. He looked so fragile, so small under the quilt, like if I breathed too loudly, I might shatter him. I sat on the edge of the bed for nearly an hour, listening to his soft breaths, fighting back tears. When I finally made my way to my own room, the silence of the house pressed against me. My thoughts kept circling back to the words he had whispered, *, "Please don't tell Mommy. She'll hurt me." *. The clock read past midnight, but my mind wandered through decades of memories, unearthing questions I had buried without realizing it. I had always believed my son Samuel was my proudest achievement. I raised him after my husband and I nearly lost everything when the factory where Richard worked shut down. We lived paycheck to paycheck for years. I worked nights at the hospital, double shifts, while Richard picked up odd jobs. Many times, we barely had money for groceries, but somehow Samuel never went without. I remember one winter, his shoes had holes in them, and I patched them every night until my fingers bled. He never knew. He thought Santa had brought him a new pair of sneakers that Christmas. He smiled so wide when he opened the box that I forgot the exhaustion of standing in line at the discount store with my last $20 bill. That's what motherhood was to me, sacrificing without being seen. And Samuel grew up bright, ambitious, always eager to prove himself. He was the first in our family to graduate from college, and I thought all my sacrifices had been worth it. When he brought Claire home for the first time, I saw the way his chest puffed out, proud to show her off. She was polished, beautiful in a cold, glossy way, with her expensive shoes and careful smile. At first, I wanted to like her. I tried. But Claire had a way of making me feel small, as though the years I had spent working my fingers to the bone counted for nothing. I remember offering her one of my home-cooked meals the first time she visited. She poked at the casserole, smiled thinly, and whispered to Samuel, *, you didn't tell me your mom cooks like it's still the 1950s. I laughed it off, even though my cheeks burned. Samuel didn't defend me. He never did when she made those little digs. Maybe he was too smitten, too eager to keep the peace. And then Elijah was born. I thought becoming a grandmother would be the happiest chapter of my life. I imagined babysitting, baking cookies, reading bedtime stories. But from the start, Claire kept me at arm's length. We don't want him spoiled, she'd say when I offered to buy toys. We're doing things differently, she'd remark when I tried to share parenting advice. Still, I was patient. I told myself that love would bridge the distance. But now I wondered what I had missed. I remembered dinners at their house where Elijah barely touched his food. Claire would snap, *, that's enough. No dessert for you. * He was only 3 at the time. He'd lower his head, obedient, while my heart ached. But Samuel never said a word. He just stared at his plate, silent. Why hadn't I spoken up then? Why had I convinced myself it was just modern parenting? The guilt gnawed at me. By dawn, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of black coffee, staring out the window as the first light spread across the neighborhood. My house was in a quiet suburb, rows of aging maples lining the streets, neighbors walking their dogs before work. Everything looked ordinary, peaceful. But inside me, a storm raged. I couldn't shake the image of Elijah asking if he was allowed to eat. I knew I needed to talk to Samuel. But what would I say? How could I accuse my own son, or his wife, without proof? And what if Elijah was punished for confiding in me? The thought made my stomach turn. Grandma? A small voice piped up behind me. I turned to see Elijah in the doorway, rubbing his eyes, his bear tucked under his arm. His hair was a messy halo, his pajamas too short at the ankles. My heart melted. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. "Did you sleep well?" He nodded, though the dark circles under his eyes told a different story. "Pancakes today," I announced, trying to infuse cheer into my voice. "With blueberries." His eyes widened, but then, hesitation. Can I really have some?" The question stabbed me like a knife. I crouched down so we were eye level. "Yes, Elijah. In this house, you never have to ask if you can eat." "Okay." He studied me for a long moment before whispering, "Okay." As he ate, giggling softly when I shaped the pancakes into little animals, I felt a small flicker of victory. But it was fragile, and I knew it. That afternoon, after I tucked him down for a nap, I picked up the phone. My hands shook as I dialed Samuel's number. It went to voicemail. "Sam," I said, my voice trembling, "it's Mom. I need to talk to you about Elijah. Call me back. Please." Hours passed. No response. The silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. I knew then that waiting for Samuel to step up wasn't enough. If he wasn't going to protect his son, then I would. Still, I needed to be careful. I needed to understand exactly what was happening before I made any move that could cost me my grandson. That night, after dinner, Elijah sat on the rug in the living room, playing quietly with blocks. I watched him, my heart aching at how content he looked, finally free to play without fear. "Elijah," I said softly, joining him on the floor. "Can I ask you something?" He nodded, stacking blocks carefully. "Does Mommy ever get angry with you?" His little hands froze. His eyes darted to the doorway, then back to me. Sometimes, he whispered. What happens when she gets angry? I pressed gently. He swallowed hard, then leaned close, his voice barely audible. She says I'm bad. Bad boys don't get dinner. Or bedtime stories. My chest tightened. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from crying. And Daddy? I asked cautiously. What does Daddy do when Mommy says that? Elijah shrugged, his eyes clouding. He goes to his office. He doesn't say anything. The words crushed me. My son, my Samuel, the boy I had once patched shoes for, stayed up all night with when he had a fever, worked endless shifts to put through school, was standing by while his child suffered. I felt fury surge through me, hot and blinding. But under it, a cold determination took root. This was no longer just about love or patience. This was about survival. I couldn't protect Richard from his heart attack. I couldn't protect my patience when cancer or time finally won. But I could protect Elijah. And I would. But how? That night, as I lay awake, listening to the steady rhythm of Elijah's breathing from the next room, I made myself a promise. I would not let this child go hungry again. And if I had to go to war with my own son to save him, then so be it. The next morning, I reached for my phone again, ready to try Samuel one more time. But before I could dial, it lit up with a text from Claire. Be ready tomorrow. I'll be picking Elijah up earlier than planned. My blood ran cold. Tomorrow. I had less than 24 hours before he was taken back into her house. Back into the hunger. Back into the fear. I set the phone down, my mind spinning. I knew what I had to do. But the question clawed at me. How far was I willing to go to protect him? I woke up before dawn, though I had barely slept. My mind spun like a wheel I couldn't stop, the words in Claire's text flashing in my head, * be ready tomorrow. I'll be picking Elijah up earlier than planned. *. The thought of sending him back into that house made my chest tighten, my breath come short. I'd spent decades as a nurse, holding the hands of dying strangers, comforting mothers who'd lost babies, coaxing dementia patients to eat when they forgot how. I'd always believed the worst pains belonged to hospitals, to disease and accidents. But watching a healthy child afraid to eat, afraid of his own mother, that was worse than any sickness I'd ever treated. I couldn't just wait for Claire to ring my doorbell. So I started making calls. At 6:30 a.m., I dialed Samuel again. It rang and rang before going to voicemail. My voice shook as I left another message. Sam, it's Mom. Please, call me back. We need to talk about Elijah. It's important. By 8 o'clock, I had called 3 times. No answer. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, watching Elijah build towers out of sugar packets. His face was brighter this morning, his laughter more genuine. But even then, every time he dropped a block and it clattered to the floor, he flinched like he expected to be yelled at. That wasn't normal. Sweetheart, I said, how about we bake cookies today? His face lit up. Really? Yes, I smiled. Really? And you can eat as many as you like. For a moment, his joy made me forget the storm brewing. But the truth pressed at the back of my mind. Time was running out. I needed answers. That afternoon, while Elijah napped, I went to the guest room where Claire had left his backpack. It slumped in the corner, half-zipped, as though tossed carelessly. I hesitated, guilt pricking me. I wasn't the kind of woman to snoop. But this wasn't about me, it was about him. I pulled it open. Inside, there was a change of clothes, mismatched socks, and a thin sweater. At the bottom, I found a crumpled brown lunch bag. Empty. Not even crumbs. I smoothed it out, my eyes catching the faint grease stains on the bottom. No fruit, no granola bar, nothing. And then, tucked in the side pocket, I found a small spiral notebook. The kind kids used for scribbles and doodles. I flipped it open. My breath caught. The first page was covered in shaky letters. I am sorry I was bad. Written over and over again, filling the page. The next page read, I will be good. Then I can eat. Tears blurred my vision. I clutched the notebook to my chest, the reality sinking like stones into my stomach. This wasn't just in my head. Elijah wasn't exaggerating. He had been taught to equate food with obedience, punishment with hunger. I sat there for a long time, staring at those words. The urge to drive straight to their house, to rip into Claire, to demand answers from Samuel, it roared through me. But another voice reminded me, be careful. If I acted rashly, Claire could twist it. She could say I was overreacting, meddling, even unstable. She could take Elijah away and never let me see him again. I had seen women like her before. Smooth on the outside, poison underneath. I needed a plan. Evidence. Something undeniable. The notebook was a start. That evening, I decided to call someone else. Not Samuel. Not Claire. Hello. The voice on the other end was familiar, warm. Rachel, I said, relief washing over me. It's Margaret. Rachel was my old neighbor and dearest friend. We'd lived on the same street for 20 years until she moved closer to her daughter last year. She knew my family better than most. Margaret. It's been too long. How are you? I hesitated. Not great, actually. It's about Elijah. And so I told her. Everything. His words at the dinner table, the notebook, the way he flinched. By the time I finished, my throat was raw. Oh my God, Rachel whispered. That poor child. I don't know what to do, I admitted, my voice breaking. If I confront them without proof, they'll shut me out. But if I wait, he suffers. There was a pause. Then Rachel said quietly, you always fought for your patients, Margaret. Even when doctors brushed things off, you stood your ground. You've got that same fire now. You just have to use it. Her words struck something deep inside me. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't just a retired widow waiting for life to pass by. I was still the woman who had fought for others when no one else would. Thank you, I whispered. I needed to hear that. After I hung up, I went to check on Elijah. He was on the living room floor, his blocks scattered around him. He looked up, smiling softly. Grandma, can I live here forever? The question broke me in two. I knelt beside him, pulling him into my arms. If I could, sweetheart, I would. But I knew it wasn't that simple. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the notebook. The words, I am sorry I was bad. I will be good. Then I can eat. Burned into me. I knew what I had to do. I opened my laptop and began searching. Child neglect signs, Ohio Child Protective Services, how to report abuse. Each link felt like a door I wasn't ready to walk through, but I forced myself to read. One line stuck with me. Neglect includes failure to provide adequate food. Adequate food. There it was in black and white. Proof that what I was seeing wasn't just strict parenting. It was abuse. But making that call, it wasn't something I could take back. If I reported Claire, the family would fracture. Samuel would hate me. Maybe even Elijah, one day, when he was old enough to be told I had broken up his home. I closed the laptop, my heart pounding. Tomorrow was coming too fast. The next morning, Claire's text arrived. On my way. Be there in an hour. Panic shot through me. I looked at Elijah, still in his pajamas, humming as he played with toy cars. The thought of sending him back made my stomach twist. I grabbed the notebook from my desk, shoving it into my purse. If Claire wanted to take him, she would have to look me in the eye while I carried the proof of what she'd done. The doorbell rang. I froze. My heart hammered so loudly I thought Elijah could hear it. Through the window, I saw Claire's sleek black SUV parked in the driveway. She stood on the porch, arms crossed, sunglasses hiding her eyes. Perfectly polished. As if nothing was wrong. Elijah. She called, her voice sharp. Time to go home. He flinched, his toy car slipping from his hand. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stand. This was the moment. The quiet war was about to begin. I opened the door. Claire, I said, my voice steady but cold. We need to talk. Right now. She tilted her head, her smile thin and dismissive. About what? I tightened my grip on my purse, the notebook inside pressing against my side like a hidden weapon. "About your son," I said. Her smile faltered. Just slightly. And in that tiny crack I saw it, the truth she'd been hiding. This was going to be a battle. The moment I opened the door, Claire breezed past me like she owned the house. Her perfume trailed behind her, sharp and suffocating, filling the hallway with the scent of roses and something metallic underneath. She didn't even look at me at first. Her eyes were already searching for Elijah. "Elijah!" She called again, her voice slicing through the quiet. I heard the shuffle of small feet behind me. Elijah peeked out from the living room, clutching his bear to his chest. His face paled when he saw her. "There you are," Claire said, her smile tight, too bright. She bent down, arms outstretched, her nails painted blood red. "Come to mommy." But Elijah didn't move. He gripped the bear tighter, his wide eyes flicking to me like I was the only thing anchoring him to the floor. That hesitation told me everything. I stepped between them. "Before you take him, we need to talk." Claire straightened slowly, her smile fading. "Talk? About what?" I kept my voice calm but firm. "About your son. About why he asked me if he was allowed to eat. About why I found pages in his notebook saying, *I will be good. Then I can eat.'" Her eyes narrowed, though her smile quickly returned, stretched tight across her face. "Children say the strangest things, Margaret. You know how they are. Overly dramatic." "This isn't drama," I said, my hand tightening on the strap of my purse where the notebook lay hidden. "This is abuse." For a heartbeat, silence. Then Claire laughed. A sharp, bitter sound that made my stomach turn. "Abuse? Really? Do you hear yourself? You're being ridiculous." "Elijah is afraid to eat in his own home," I shot back. "He told me himself. That's not normal." Her smile snapped, her expression hardening into something colder than I'd ever seen. "Listen to me, Margaret," she hissed, stepping closer. "You are overstepping. Whatever happens in my house is none of your business." "He's my grandson," I said, steel rising in my voice. "That makes it my business." Her lips curled into a sneer. "Your grandson? He's my son. You don't get a say in how I raise him." Behind me, Elijah whimpered softly, pressing his face into the bear's fur. The sound fueled my resolve. "You're starving him," I whispered. "And if you think I'm going to stand by and let that continue, you don't know me as well as you think." Claire's eyes blazed. "Careful," she said, her tone dripping with threat. "You're walking on dangerous ground. Do you want to see your son again? Do you want to see Elijah again after today?" The words sliced through me like glass. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. "You wouldn't dare," I said. "Oh, wouldn't I?" She shot back. "Samuel listens to me. He trusts me. If I tell him you're unstable, if I tell him you're trying to interfere in our marriage, he'll cut you out. He won't even hesitate. And then? Then you'll never see Elijah again." Her words struck deep, but instead of fear, I felt anger rise. For years I'd held my tongue around this woman, swallowed her little insults, endured her coldness, for Samuel's sake, for Elijah's. But not anymore. "You can spin whatever story you want," I said, voice trembling but steady. "But I know the truth now. And I have proof." Her eyes flicked to my purse. Just for a second, but I saw it. She knew. "What proof?" she asked quickly, her voice sharp. "The notebook," I said, holding her gaze. "His words. In his own handwriting. And I'll take it to Child Protective Services if I have to." Her face drained of color before twisting into rage. "You wouldn't. Try me." For a long moment, we stood locked in silence, the air between us heavy with unspoken war. Then, slowly, she leaned in, her voice low enough only I could hear. "You think you're strong enough to fight me, old woman?" she whispered. "You're not. Samuel belongs to me. Elijah belongs to me. And if you cross me, I will bury you." I flinched, but I didn't back down. "Elijah isn't property," I said firmly. "He's a little boy. And he deserves better." She smiled then, but it wasn't kind. It was the smile of someone who believed she'd already won. "Pack his things," she said coldly, straightening her jacket. "We're leaving." I hesitated, glancing back at Elijah. His small hands trembled, his eyes wide with silent pleading. In that instant, I made a choice. "No," I said. Claire's head snapped toward me. "What did you just say?" "I said no," I repeated, my voice stronger this time. "He's not going back with you. Not until this is sorted out." Her jaw clenched. "You don't have that authority." "Maybe not," I admitted. "But I do have something else. I have the will to protect him. And if you want to take him, you'll have to go through me first." For the first time, real fury flickered across her face. She stepped closer, so close I could smell the bitterness in her perfume. "You'll regret this," she spat. I didn't move. "We'll see." Behind me, Elijah clung tighter to his bear, his small voice trembling. "Grandma." I turned to him, softening my tone instantly. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe." But even as I said it, my heart pounded. Because deep down, I knew this battle had only just begun. Claire pulled her phone from her purse, tapping furiously at the screen. "Fine," she said, her voice icy. "If you want a war, you'll have one." She stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her so hard the walls rattled. Through the window, I saw her phone pressed to her ear, her mouth moving rapidly as she stalked toward her SUV. She was calling Samuel. I felt my knees weaken, the adrenaline draining from me. My hands shook as I locked the door, my breath coming in sharp bursts. Elijah looked up at me with wide, frightened eyes. "Is Mommy mad?" I crouched down, cupping his face in my hands. "Yes, sweetheart," I admitted. "But you don't have to be afraid. Not anymore." Inside, I prayed I was telling the truth. That night, after Elijah finally fell asleep, I sat in the dim light of the kitchen, staring at the notebook on the table. I traced the shaky letters with my finger. Asterisk, "I will be good. Then I can eat." Asterisk. Claire's threats echoed in my head. Asterisk, "Samuel belongs to me. Elijah belongs to me. If you cross me, I will bury you." Asterisk. I knew what was coming. She would twist the truth. She would paint me as the villain. And Samuel, my own son, might believe her. But I couldn't back down now. Not when Elijah's little life depended on me. As I reached for my phone, preparing to make the call I'd been dreading, to Child Protective Services, the screen lit up. It was Samuel. Calling me. My hands trembled as I picked up. "Mom." His voice was sharp, already angry. "What the hell did you say to Claire?" My throat tightened. I looked toward the guest room where Elijah slept peacefully, unaware of the storm brewing. And I realized, the real war was about to begin. "Mom." Samuel's voice thundered through the receiver, raw with anger. "What the hell is going on?" I gripped the phone tighter, trying to steady my voice. "Samuel, I need you to calm down and listen to me. Please." "Don't you dare tell me to calm down," he snapped. "Claire just called me hysterical, saying you threatened her, that you're trying to keep Elijah from her. Do you have any idea how insane that sounds?" I closed my eyes. Just as I feared, Claire had spun her web quickly. "Samuel," I said carefully, "Claire isn't telling you the whole story. Elijah." "Elijah is fine," he interrupted. "He's my son. I know what's best for him. And Claire, she's his mother. How dare you accuse her of?" "I'm not accusing," I said firmly. "I'm telling you what your son told me. He asked me if he was allowed to eat. He's starving, Samuel. He's afraid in his own home." There was silence on the line, heavy and suffocating. For a moment, I thought I heard his breath hitch, as if something in my words had struck him. But then his voice hardened again. "You're overreacting," he said flatly. "Kids say strange things. He probably misunderstood something. Claire loves him." I nearly laughed, though it came out more like a sob. "Loves him? Samuel, I saw his notebook. He wrote it down, over and over. Asterisk, I will be good. Then I can eat. Asterisk, do you know what that means?" Another pause. shorter this time. Then, anger. No, he said sharply. It means you're looking for problems where there aren't any. You've always been like this, Mom. Always meddling. Always trying to control things. The words pierced deeper than I wanted to admit. My own son, my boy I'd raised with every ounce of strength I had, was standing against me. Samuel, I whispered, I'm not trying to control anything. I'm trying to save your son. His reply was cold. If you don't hand him back to Claire by tomorrow, I'll make sure you never see him again. Do you understand? The line went dead. I sat there in the kitchen, staring at the silent phone, my chest aching like it had been split open. Elijah padded into the room a few minutes later, rubbing his eyes. Grandma? Was that Daddy? I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a smile. Yes, sweetheart. Daddy called. His face lit up with hope. Is he coming? The question stabbed me deeper than Samuel's words. I couldn't bear to tell him the truth. Not tonight. So I pulled him onto my lap, rocking him gently. Not right now, I murmured. But I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. He laid his head on my chest, and soon his breaths evened out. I stared at the darkened kitchen window, vowing silently that no matter what it cost me, I would protect him. The next morning, I woke to the sound of pounding on the door. My heart jolted, fear rushing through me. For one dreadful moment, I thought it was the police, sent by Claire to drag Elijah away. But when I opened the door, it was my neighbor, Janice. Margaret? She asked, her brow furrowed. Are you all right? I saw that woman storm out of your house yesterday. She looked ready to kill someone. Relief washed over me, though it was quickly replaced by weariness. I'm fine, I said softly. It's just family trouble. Janice crossed her arms, her sharp eyes narrowing. Has this got something to do with Elijah? Because I've noticed things. That boy never looks fed when Claire picks him up from school. Once, he even asked me for crackers in the carpool line. Her words hit me like a lifeline. I wasn't crazy. Someone else had seen it too. Janice, I whispered, lowering my voice, would you be willing to put that in writing? If I have to, fight for him. Without hesitation, she nodded. Of course. That boy needs someone on his side. Tears pricked my eyes. For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Later that day, I sat with Elijah at the table, watching him eat the pancakes I'd made. He devoured them with such hunger that it broke me all over again. Grandma, he said between bites, will Daddy be mad if I eat too much? I nearly dropped my fork. No, sweetheart, I said firmly. You can eat as much as you want here. Always. He hesitated, then asked the question that shattered me, even if Mommy says no? I reached across the table and held his tiny hand. Especially then. That night, Samuel showed up. I heard his car before I saw him, his heavy truck pulling into the driveway. My heart raced as I watched him step out, tall and broad like his father had been, but with Claire's bitterness etched into his face. Mom, he said as soon as I opened the door. We're not doing this. He pushed past me into the house, his eyes scanning until they landed on Elijah. Daddy. Elijah cried, rushing to him. He wrapped his arms around Samuel's legs, his little face beaming. For a brief moment, Samuel softened, crouching down to hug him. But then he looked at me over Elijah's head, his eyes hard again. Get his things. He's leaving with me. No, I said, my voice shaking but steady. Not until this is investigated. Not until I know he's safe. Samuel's jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. Am I? I asked, pulling the notebook from my purse. I held it out to him. Read this. This is your son's handwriting. Do you really think I would make this up? He hesitated, his eyes flicking to the notebook. For a moment, just a moment, I saw doubt flicker across his face. He reached out, then stopped, shaking his head. I'm not doing this with you, he muttered. Claire said you'd try to turn me against her. She was right. And with that, he turned to Elijah. Come on, buddy. Let's go. Elijah froze, clutching my skirt instead. I want to stay with Grandma, he whispered. Samuel's face darkened. Elijah, I said let's go. The boy didn't move. His small hands gripped tighter, his knuckles white. Samuel, I said firmly, if you take him tonight, I'll call the police. And I'll call child services first thing in the morning. Do you want that? His nostrils flared. For a long, tense moment, I thought he might hit me. But then he exhaled sharply, stepping back. This isn't over, he growled. You're going to regret this. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. I sank into the nearest chair, my legs trembling, Elijah still clinging to me. Grandma, he whispered. Did I do something bad? I hugged him tight, fighting back tears. No, sweetheart, I whispered. You did everything right. Everything. That night, I called Janice again. She came over with tea and sat with me at the table while Elijah slept. You're going to need more than just me, she said gently. You'll need teachers, maybe a doctor. Anyone who's seen signs. She was right. This wasn't just about love anymore. It was about building a case strong enough to tear through Claire's lies. And as I lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling, I realized something else. This fight wasn't just about Elijah. It was about Samuel, too. About showing him the truth, no matter how deep Claire's poison had sunk into him. But I also knew this. Before the truth came to light, things were going to get much, much worse. Because Claire wouldn't back down. And now, she had Samuel by her side. The knock on the door came early in the morning, sharp and commanding. It wasn't the hesitant tap of a neighbor or the heavy pounding of Samuel. It was official. I opened it to find 2 uniformed officers standing on my porch. My breath caught in my chest. Margaret Whitfield? The taller one asked. Yes, I whispered. We've had a call from the child's parents, he continued, glancing down at a clipboard. They've reported that you're withholding their son against their will. We need to ask you some questions. Behind me, Elijah peeked out from the hallway, his bear clutched tightly in his arms. His face went pale at the sight of the officers. Grandma, he whispered, fear dripping from his voice. It's all right, sweetheart, I said softly, forcing a calm I didn't feel. Go back to the living room. I'll be there soon. The officers exchanged a glance. One of them stepped forward. Ma'am, is the child here with you now? Yes, I admitted, my voice trembling. But you need to understand, he's not safe with them. He told me things. He's starving at home. He's terrified of his own mother. The officer's expression softened slightly, but his tone remained firm. If you have concerns about the child's welfare, the proper course is to file a report with Child Protective Services. You can't withhold him without legal grounds. I've already started gathering evidence, I insisted. His notebook, my neighbor's testimony, even the way he looks when he eats. He devours food like he hasn't seen a proper meal in days. The officers hesitated, clearly caught between protocol and compassion. Finally, the taller one sighed. Ma'am, we're not here to remove him today. We're here to warn you. If the parents file a formal complaint, this could become serious. Do you understand? I nodded, relief and dread swirling together. Yes, I understand. As they left, Elijah rushed into my arms, trembling. Are they taking me away? No, I whispered fiercely, hugging him close. Not today. Not ever, if I can help it. But deep down, I knew Claire had fired her first real shot. And it wouldn't be her last. That afternoon, I called Child Protective Services myself. My hands shook as I dialed the number, my voice steadying only as I began to speak. This is Margaret Whitfield, I told the woman on the other end. I need to report suspected child abuse. It's about my grandson. The words felt heavy, but also freeing. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was taking action. The woman listened patiently, asked questions, and took down notes. When I mentioned Elijah's notebook, she said, "Keep that safe. That could be important." After hanging up, I exhaled shakily. It was a small step, but it felt like the first stone laid in a foundation I would build brick by brick. That evening, Janice came over again with a casserole dish in hand. "Figured you could use something hearty," she said. I smiled weakly. "You're a blessing." She set the dish down and leaned across the table. "Margaret, I've been thinking. You shouldn't just rely on my word. Talk to Elijah's teacher. Talk to the school nurse. If Claire's been neglecting him, someone else has seen it too." The idea sent a spark through me. Of course. I'd been so wrapped up in fear, I hadn't thought beyond my own observations. "You're right," I said slowly. "The school. They must have noticed something." The next morning, I drove Elijah to school myself. His little hand clung to mine tightly as we walked to the front office. "Grandma, will Mommy be mad if she sees you here?" he asked nervously. I crouched down, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Sweetheart, don't worry about Mommy right now. Just remember, you're safe with me." He nodded, though doubt still lingered in his eyes. Inside the office, I introduced myself to the secretary and asked to speak with Elijah's teacher, Ms. Donovan. When she appeared, I saw a flicker of recognition and concern cross her face. "Mrs. Whitfield, I was meaning to call you." We sat down in a quiet corner of the office. She lowered her voice. "I've noticed Elijah's been withdrawn. He often comes to school hungry. Sometimes he asks for snacks more than the other kids. I've sent notes home, but I never heard back." My chest tightened. "Miss Donovan, would you be willing to write that down? Anything you've observed?" She nodded without hesitation. "If it helps him, yes. Absolutely." The school nurse added her own testimony later that day, how Elijah was underweight for his age, how he'd once mentioned, "Mommy says no dinner if I'm bad." Piece by piece, the picture was forming. Not just in my mind, but on paper. But Claire was quick to strike back. 2 days later, I received a letter in the mail. A formal notice. Petition for custody review. My hands shook as I read the words. Claire and Samuel were accusing me of interfering with their parental rights. They were demanding the court order Elijah returned immediately. The paper blurred as tears filled my eyes. They were dragging me into a legal war. That evening, Samuel called again. His voice was cold, clipped. "Mom, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Just hand him over. Stop fighting us." "I can't," I said, my voice breaking. "Not when he's suffering." "You're choosing to believe lies," he spat. "Lies you've convinced yourself of. Claire is a good mother. You're the one causing damage here." The words tore through me, but I held firm. "Maybe one day you'll see the truth, Samuel. Until then, I'll keep fighting." He hung up without a word. I sat in silence afterward, staring at the custody petition on the table. It felt impossible, overwhelming. I was just one woman, nearing 60, with little money and no influence. But then Elijah climbed into my lap, resting his head on my shoulder. "Grandma, will I always live with you?" I swallowed hard, pressing a kiss to his hair. "I'll do everything I can to make sure of it, sweetheart. Everything." And in that moment, the fear gave way to resolve. The next week, I began visiting people I thought might help. Old friends, church members, even the pediatrician who had once seen Elijah with unexplained bruises on his arms. Some shook their heads, afraid to get involved. But others, more than I expected, offered to stand with me. "You're not alone, Margaret," Janice told me one night, her hand squeezing mine. "Claire might be loud, but truth is louder. Don't forget that." Her words echoed in my mind as I tucked Elijah into bed later. I watched him sleep, his small chest rising and falling peacefully, and I vowed again, I would not let them win. Not through lies. Not through fear. Not through the law twisting against him. This was more than a custody fight. It was a battle for Elijah's soul. And I was just getting started. But as I drifted to sleep that night, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text message. From an unknown number. Asterisk, "You should stop digging, Margaret. Accidents happen. People get hurt. Do you really want to risk that?" Asterisk. My blood ran cold. Claire wasn't just fighting dirty anymore. She was threatening me. And I knew, This war had officially crossed a line. The courthouse smelled of polish and old paper, its marble floors echoing with footsteps that made me feel smaller with each step. I had dressed in my best navy dress, the one I used to wear to church on Easter, though my hands trembled as I clutched Elijah's file of evidence to my chest. Janice walked beside me, her head held high. "Remember, Margaret," she whispered. "You're not here to beg. You're here to speak the truth. Just breathe." But as I stepped into the courtroom, my courage faltered. There sat Claire, immaculate in a cream suit, her hair pinned into a perfect bun. She looked like the very picture of grace and respectability, her face arranged in a mask of serene concern. Beside her sat Samuel, shoulders stiff, eyes locked on the table. He didn't look at me once. My heart ached at the sight of him. My son. My boy. The one I had rocked to sleep, prayed over, sacrificed for. And now he sat across from me, cold and unreachable. At the judge's bench, a stern woman in black robes shuffled papers. "Court is now in session for Whitfield versus Whitfield," the bailiff announced. Claire's attorney, a slick man in a tailored suit, rose first. "Your Honor, my clients Samuel and Claire Whitfield are here to petition for the immediate return of their son, Elijah Whitfield, who is currently being unlawfully withheld by his paternal grandmother." Unlawfully withheld. The words stung like acid. The attorney gestured dramatically toward Claire, who dabbed her eyes with a tissue. "Mrs. Whitfield has been painted as a cruel and negligent mother. These accusations are not only false, but deeply damaging to a child's well-being. Elijah needs stability, not to be caught in the middle of his grandmother's obsession." Obsession. My stomach churned. The judge turned her gaze toward me. "Mrs. Whitfield, you'll have your chance to speak. Please wait until it's your turn." I nodded, my throat tight. Claire's attorney continued, spinning a tale of a loving mother slandered by an overbearing, unstable grandmother. Every word twisted the truth, each sentence another stone laid on my chest. When he finally sat down, Claire rose, her voice trembling like she had rehearsed every syllable. "Your Honor, I love my son. He's my world. I would never harm him. But Margaret, she's been interfering in my marriage for years. Now she's trying to turn Elijah against me. He's only 5, he doesn't understand. Please, I just want my baby back." Her performance was flawless. Even Samuel placed a hand on her back as if to steady her, his eyes finally glancing up, hard and accusing, at me. The judge scribbled notes before nodding. "Mrs. Whitfield," she said, turning toward me, "you may present your side." My knees felt weak as I rose, but Janice's hand on my shoulder steadied me. I walked slowly to the front, setting the worn notebook on the table. My voice shook at first, but grew stronger with each word. "Your Honor, I didn't keep Elijah out of malice. I did it because he asked me if he was allowed to eat. Because when I placed dinner in front of him, he didn't touch it. He just stared, terrified. And when I asked him why, he whispered, "Am I allowed to eat today?" Asterisk. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Claire's attorney immediately rose. "Objection, hearsay." The judge raised a hand. "Overruled. Continue." I opened the notebook, holding it up with trembling hands. This is Elijah's handwriting. Page after page, he wrote the same thing. "I will be good. Then I can eat." Asterisk. Gasps echoed. I saw Samuel shift uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. I pressed on, tears blurring my vision. No child writes that unless they are living in fear. I am not trying to take him away from his parents forever. I am trying to protect him until we know he is safe. The judge leaned forward. "Do you have corroboration?" "Yes," I said quickly. "His teacher, Ms. Donovan, has documented instances of Elijah arriving hungry. The school nurse has noted his low weight and once recorded a comment that he missed dinner as punishment. And my neighbor, Janice, witnessed him asking for food during carpool." Janice stood then, her voice ringing clear. "I will testify under oath. That little boy is hungry more often than not." The judge nodded, scribbling more notes. Claire's mask cracked, just for a moment. Her eyes flared with something sharp and venomous before she quickly composed herself. Her attorney shot to his feet again. Your Honor, this is a smear campaign. A child scribbling in a notebook is not evidence of abuse. Teachers and neighbors making casual observations are not medical proof. Mrs. Whitfield is grasping at straws to undermine a perfectly stable home. Stable. The word made my fists clench. The judge leaned back, her expression unreadable. I will order a temporary evaluation by Child Protective Services. Until then, Elijah will remain with his grandmother, under supervision, pending the outcome. For the first time in weeks, I felt air rush back into my lungs. Relief swept through me, though I kept my face composed. Elijah would stay, for now. But then Claire rose to her feet, her voice trembling with false fragility. Your Honor, with all respect. I'm terrified that Margaret will poison Elijah against me during this time. Please, I beg the court to prohibit her from speaking ill of me in front of him. The judge studied me sharply. Mrs. Whitfield, do you understand these terms? No disparaging comments about his parents in the child's presence. I nodded firmly. Yes, Your Honor. It wasn't about words. It was about actions. And Elijah already knew the truth in his bones. Outside the courthouse, the air felt sharper, colder. Samuel finally approached me, his face unreadable. Mom, he said quietly. What are you doing? I'm protecting your son, I replied. His jaw clenched. You're tearing this family apart. No, I said softly, searching his eyes for the boy I used to know. Claire is. I just won't stand by and watch. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head and walked away, following Claire to their car. I stood there on the courthouse steps, watching them leave, my heart breaking but my resolve hardening. That night, I tucked Elijah into bed. He clung to me tightly, whispering, Do I still stay here, Grandma? I kissed his forehead. Yes, sweetheart. You're staying here. He smiled faintly, drifting to sleep with his bear tucked under his chin. I sat by the window afterward, staring at the dark street outside. That was when I saw it, a black car idling across the road. No lights, no movement. Just sitting there. A chill ran down my spine. I watched for nearly an hour. It never moved. Finally, I closed the curtains, my heart pounding. Claire's text echoed in my mind. Asterisk accidents happen. People get hurt. Asterisk. She wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. And now, she was watching me. The day of the final hearing arrived like the slow drum of thunder before a storm. The courthouse was fuller this time. Teachers, neighbors, even the school nurse had been subpoenaed to testify. The air buzzed with tension. Everyone knew today would decide Elijah's future. I clutched his small hand as we walked up the marble steps. He wore the blue sweater I had knitted him last Christmas, the one he refused to take off when he first came to stay. His fingers dug into mine, tighter than usual. Grandma, he whispered, his voice barely audible. If I tell the truth, will I get in trouble? I crouched down to his level, looking straight into his wide brown eyes. No, sweetheart. Telling the truth is the bravest thing you'll ever do. And I'll be right there. He nodded, though his lip trembled. I kissed his forehead, praying silently that God would give him courage. Inside, Claire sat with her lawyer and Samuel, immaculate as ever in a scarlet dress, her pearl earrings glinting under the courtroom lights. She looked like someone ready for a gala, not a custody battle. Her eyes flicked to Elijah, then to me, narrowing like daggers. The judge began the session briskly. We are here to determine temporary custody and safety arrangements regarding Elijah Whitfield. Both sides have submitted evidence. Today we'll hear testimony. Claire's attorney rose first. He paraded character witnesses, friends of Claire who praised her as a devoted mother, painting her as misunderstood. It was all rehearsed, slick and hollow, but the judge listened politely. Then it was our turn. Janice spoke with clarity about Elijah's hunger during carpool. Ms. Donovan, his teacher, described his withdrawn behavior, his stomach growling audibly during lessons. The school nurse read directly from her notes. Child presented underweight for age. Reported missing meals as punishment. Each testimony felt like a stone laid in a wall of truth. Claire's face tightened with every word, her hand gripping Samuel's arm harder and harder. Finally, it was Elijah's turn. The courtroom grew still as he was guided to the small wooden chair. His legs dangled above the floor, his little hands twisting the hem of his sweater. The judge leaned forward, her voice softer than before. "Elijah, do you know why you're here today?" He nodded slowly. Because I had to stay with Grandma." "And can you tell me why?" His eyes flickered to me, then to his parents. Claire gave him a small smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. Samuel's face was unreadable. Elijah's chin quivered. "Because, sometimes, when I'm bad, Mommy says I can't eat dinner. Sometimes breakfast too." His voice cracked. But I try so hard to be good." Gasps filled the courtroom. My heart splintered hearing his little voice carry those words. Claire shot to her feet. "He's confused. He's being coached." The judge's gavel banged sharply. "Sit down, Mrs. Whitfield." Elijah's tears streamed down his cheeks now. "I wrote it in my book so I wouldn't forget. I thought, if I wrote I will be good enough times, then maybe I could eat every day." I covered my mouth, stifling a sob. The room was utterly silent except for his trembling voice. The judge nodded solemnly. "Thank you, Elijah. You were very brave." He was led back to me, climbing onto my lap and burying his face against my shoulder. His small body shook with silent sobs. I held him tightly, whispering, "You're safe. You're safe now." The judge's voice rang clear. "Based on the testimony and evidence presented, I am granting temporary full custody of Elijah Whitfield to his grandmother, Margaret Whitfield, pending a full Child Protective Services investigation. Mrs. Clare Whitfield is prohibited from unsupervised contact until further notice." The gavel struck. It was over. Or so I thought. As people filed out, Samuel remained seated, staring at the table. Claire, however, erupted. "This is outrageous," she hissed, storming toward me. "You think you've won? You old witch, he's mine. Do you hear me? Mine." The bailiff stepped in quickly, pulling her back. But her mask was gone. For the first time, the courtroom saw the venom behind the pearls and perfect hair. Samuel's head lifted at last. His eyes darted between her and Elijah clinging to me. His face crumpled like something inside him finally broke. "Claire," he whispered. "Is it true?" She froze. "Samuel. Is it true?" His voice cracked like a whip. "You starved our son?" Her lips parted, searching for another lie, but no words came. Her silence was answer enough. Samuel stumbled back a step, as if struck. He pressed a hand to his forehead, tears springing to his eyes. "My God," he whispered. "What have I done?" For the first time in years, he looked at me, not with anger, but with the raw ache of a man who finally saw the wreckage of his choices. "Mom." His voice broke. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I stared at him, torn between fury and pity. "You didn't want to know, Samuel. That's the truth." He dropped his gaze, shoulders sagging. That night, back at the house, Elijah curled up beside me, sleeping soundly for the first time in weeks. I stroked his hair, listening to the steady rhythm of his breaths. Samuel arrived late, standing awkwardly in the doorway. His eyes were swollen from crying. "Mom," he said softly, "I don't expect forgiveness. Not after everything. But thank you for saving my son when I couldn't." I studied him for a long moment. He was still my boy, broken and blind, but perhaps not beyond redemption. "Samuel," I whispered, "if you want to be his father again, you're going to have to earn it. Slowly, carefully, by showing up every single day." He nodded, tears streaking his cheeks. "I will. I swear it." I believed him, not because of his words, but because of the way his eyes lingered on Elijah, soft and regretful, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Weeks later, CPS confirmed the abuse. Claire was barred from custody indefinitely. Samuel began therapy, showing up for supervised visits with Elijah at my home. He was clumsy at first, awkward, but I saw the spark of change flicker. As for me, I found strength I didn't know I had. For years I had been shrinking, letting life pass me by. But now I stood taller, not for myself alone, but for a little boy who needed someone steady to anchor him. One evening, Elijah tugged at my sleeve. "Grandma," he asked, "does this mean I can always eat dinner now?" Tears filled my eyes as I knelt beside him. "Yes, sweetheart. You'll never have to ask that again." He grinned, wide and free, before running off to play. I watched him, my heart swelling. For the first time in a long time, I felt not just like a mother or a grandmother, but like a warrior. Quiet, scarred, but unbroken. And though the battle had cost me dearly, I knew one thing for certain. We had won. Not with bitterness. Not with vengeance. But with the truth. My love. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.